Cricket et al. It's a website, it's a podcast.
Pete, it's a way of life. It's Gideon Haig over here.
Peter Lawler over here.
And welcome to Cricket et al., your independent cricket podcast. Coming to the end of the Australian season, but it's always cricket somewhere, isn't it, Pete? Always cricket somewhere. And shortly we'll be beginning the carnival of the IPL, so it's a hinge point in 2025. And we're also getting towards the end of the Sheffield Shield season, and my own season for that matter, Pete. So
right. Well, it's my least favourite time of year.
Is
I
it really?
I cannot stand this time of year. That sort of it's the shoulder season, isn't it? Or is that what you'd call it?
So
The
what are we doing the
matches
podcast
are
for
over,
then?
the Sheffield
piss
Shield's
off.
on its hands and knees. The IPL's coming. There's no test matches. I just get very confused and I think I just get confused when the first rounds of the AFL start.
Yeah,
there's
that's true.
footy
yeah.
on the screen.
Yeah.
It kind of does
Yeah.
my head in.
Yes.
The cricket's still going. There's footy going. Where are we? How's your cricket going? You had a final, didn't you?
Yeah, we
Or
did.
you-
We won our semi, so we're into the prelim on next Saturday.
So the fever still possesses.
Yeah.
Guys at the
There's
hours.
a lot of activity on the WhatsApp. Guys are very cheerful. It's a good time of year actually for
Right,
club
yeah.
cricketers. If you've made it to the business end, then there's a feeling that of possibility. There's also a feeling that you've done your job pretty well. No, it was pretty satisfactory day on Saturday.
What month was your first game of the season?
Jeez, it seems like a long time ago now.
It does.
doesn't
That's
it?
what I mean.
Yeah.
Like it just seems like this season seemed to take a year.
Yeah. Well, actually, in my case, they do because I train all the way through winter.
Yeah.
We have this institution at the Yarras called Yarras STU, the Special Training Unit, and we get together
Wear
every.
balaclavas. Well, you do because it's so cold.
Yeah, it's like we're like the Bondi icebergs of cricket. We get together on Saturday mornings, and I play some of my best cricket actually during winter.
During winter.
Yeah. But before we get to STU, we've got to finish off the season, and it's going okay. It's anything can happen in finals.
Well, it's good that I guess those teams in the finals are still gripped by it, and the Sheffield Shield's still trying to continue on. In fact, it's all pretty well positioned, isn't it?
It's brilliantly positioned. I mean, it's been one of the tightest shields in a long time. I think precisely because South Australia's been such an unexpected hit this summer. They've always, the last 10 years probably they've fallen out of contention pretty early. But this season they've led the way. Kudos to Ryan Harris in his first year at South Australia. He's obviously done a great job. And apart from Tasmania, all the other teams have kept in touch, and they're all, in theory, possibilities to be South Australia's matchup in the final. I guess Queensland's now out of contention because South Australia's cleaned their clocks. But Cooper Connolly's battled away for WA to keep them in touch in their game against Victoria. Jordan Silk's probably batted New South Wales out of the Shield final, so it's going to come down to that WA Vic game. Might be Peter Siddle's last game for the Vics, but maybe not.
And New South Wales at last got that Nikitas. Is that how I say his name? Nikitas back.
Blake
opening.
Nikitaris. Yeah.
Nikitaris.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah. Yep. Good to see him back in the side. I think they've been a bit long in the tooth this year, New South Wales.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah. But they've been inconsistent.
South Australia are so
I think
strong,
everyone has
aren't
been.
they?
Yeah.
It's a disappointment. The Shield final will not be at Adelaide Oval.
And what happened to that brief glimmer of the Shield final at South Australian cricket's traditional home, Pete? We were talking about it last week, weren't we? That didn't last long.
No. AFL said no. Player safety.
Well, they also
everyone grips their pearls, and that's the end of it, isn't it?
They did say, well, maybe if you give us an absolutely unbeatable offer, didn't they? Wasn't there some talk of if the South Australian government subsidised all public transport to the Adelaide Oval for the entire year, then maybe they might get over their reservations about player safety? Amazing, isn't it? Player safety always has a price, doesn't it?
If I was a former Cricket Australia employee currently at the AFL, I'd quit. On principle. Kate? Yeah, so that was a bit disappointing. And have they moved it? Where has it gone to? Karen Rolton?
It's gone to Karen Rolton Oval.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
And my mate Carey made 100. He's had a great summer, hasn't he?
He has had a great
I think
summer, hasn't he?
averaged 92, I think, in first class cricket.
And I mean,
Averaged
how much
50
cricket?
in Test cricket?
How much cricket has this guy played? He's just unstoppable. He is an Iron Man. Other guys are falling by the wayside. Even Steve Smith's not playing at the moment, and that's usually, he's usually the last one to down tools. But Alex Carey has just hit a hot streak, and like a smart cricketer, when you're hot, you just keep on playing.
And you like to see it too, don't you?
Yeah.
Because you get that real sense that he's a South Australian. Talking about, everybody's still with a chance in the finals is up and about. Usman's not.
Usman's not. He was down in Melbourne, wasn't he, for the Formula One on Sunday?
Yeah, for the Formula One while Queensland were getting hammered by South Australia.
Probably wouldn't have made a huge difference in the end.
No,
Marnus
he wouldn't.
Played, I noticed.
He wouldn't. Yeah, Marnus is playing. I suppose Usman has played a lot of cricket, but he hasn't played as much as the guys in the Champions Trophy.
No.
Initially, they didn't give any reason for him not playing. Then they sort of said it was an injury. He told me his hammy was a bit stiff, but your hammy would be a bit stiff at that age, wouldn't it? Generally.
I guess so. And he is wearing the T-shirt too, so we can't knock him.
Well, he's no longer the captain, is he?
Yeah.
I think there's some chance that Marnus might not be available for the final, so Usman could come back in.
Okay.
This is just coming out of the recesses.
They've got to get
of my
there
brain.
first. Got to get there first. And it's not looking good for them. Yeah.
That's true. Sorry, I had overlooked that fact. They're not actually in it, are they? Has it been a good year for the Sheffield Shield?
I think it has. Yeah. Because it's been so even. Because you've had the any given Sunday quality. Even Tasmania, who are bottom of the table, have won 2 matches, and they've got some good cricketers. And Bo Webster's had a standout season. He's picked up another fifer in the game against New South Wales. Jordan Silk's made 100. Jake Weatherall's played really well for them. So, they've got some things to commend them. So everyone's been in with a shout.
To have a look at, haven't they? And your Ollie Peake, he's from down your way, isn't he?
Indeed.
Was he your neighbour?
Yep.
Is he your mum's neighbour in Geelong?
Yes, yeah. Well, the Peaks are big cricketing figures in this neck of the woods. It's interesting when you sort of go through multiple generations of a cricketing family. It doesn't look anything like his dad. He's a little guy, little lefty. So
he made a nice 52, a patient one, wasn't it?
Made a very nice
balls,
start.
That was good. Did Peter Hanscom took the gloves for Victoria, and did he take something like 7 catches?
Yeah.
Did you count them?
No, I didn't count them, but
he's had quite the summer, Pete.
He's a very handy cricketer, isn't he?
700 runs.
Can turn his hand to anything. Maybe his international ship has sailed, but I think in the long term, he's the kind of cricketer who you want to keep in the system because he brings such quality to Australian first-class cricket. We haven't been good at retaining players like that. We've tended to think of them as dead wood, but they do raise the general standard and they do have a role as mentors to the next generation. There are a lot of next-generation players who've had good breakout seasons this year. Campbell Kellaway's had a very good season for Victoria. Cooper Connolly's emerged. There's some good young pace bowlers around. There's been just a hint of spin. So yeah, the Sheffield Shield this summer can take a bit of credit for doing its job. When it continues to produce players like Bo Webster, that's a great advertisement for the depth of first class competition in this country.
Well, it's produced, like, if you look, Bo Webster, Sam Constas, Josh Inglis, you mentioned Cooper Connolly and McSweeney.
Yeah.
All got to graduate this year, didn't they? And go and play Test cricket. Murphy and Kuhneman were ready to go when called on. So that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think I think you can use that as a metric of how well the Shield's going. That there are players ready to go when you need them.
Sure, but there's been vigorous competition,
as well, obviously.
Vigorous competition as well, and I think that counts when teams are actually going out of their way to win the tournament, not simply to, be a kind of a glorified practice net, which I think we did get into the habit of doing in Sheffield Shield cricket. There was a common philosophy that it doesn't really matter who wins as long as it's generating potential international players. I actually like it the other way around. I think the potential international players come out of vigorous competition between the states. People always used to carp about Victoria. They're only in it to win domestic trophies and they don't produce Test cricket. But by raising the general standard, I think that conduces to the production, the long-term production of potential Australian Test cricketers.
Agreed.
Good for you.
There's something else going on in cricket too, isn't there? Did you read that story in Chris Barrett's story in the 9 Facts papers on the weekend?
Yeah, I did. And in some ways I've read this story already, haven't we? I look back and it was 2 years since the first Saudi Arabia about to smash Cricket Open story, which I think I wrote about at the Oz. It doesn't actually seem to have advanced all that much. We now have a name. We have Neil Maxwell has raised his head above the ramparts. Of course, if there's you can always be guaranteed that Neil will be in the midst of all deal making. Things have changed a little bit. We've had the Saudis investing in DAZN out here in the takeover of Foxtel, so they've made inroads on sport in Australia. They're perhaps a little bit more visible. But there was still some interesting stuff in the story, which struck me as kind of preemptive propaganda for it. As one door closes, another opens, Pete. The 18th IPL begins on Sunday with the first of 12 double headers, KKR versus RCB and Sunrisers versus Royals. That's the beginning of 74 matches in 65 days at the most crucifyingly hot time of year in India. And I'm bound to say it's probably going to be, it's ridiculous to say this is going to be one of the biggest IPLs, but it is coming off the back of India winning the Champions Trophy, the BCCI's kind of co-option of the ICC, which has kind of consolidated Indian power in cricket. No World Test Championship final to distract them, so no need to worry about what's coming next. They can just go absolutely flat out for 2 months.
And how many games do you reckon you'll watch?
I'll watch a few. It's a bit of a punish. I'm
always
the
excited
zone
at the start.
Yeah,
and those double headers, you get an early start, don't you? So you can watch those matches, and then I fall off it. But of course, it's already interesting jostling. The Pakistan have decided to go toe to toe with it and put the PSL on at the same time as the IPL this year. I think it starts a little bit later, but basically it runs. And that's a good idea, actually. It sounds counterintuitive, but it's actually less competition if you're up against the IPL than if you're up against all those other T20 leagues in the previous window.
Yes.
And they've landed the big fish. Like, you're excited about the IPL, so is the rest of the world. I'm excited about the PSL because that's where Super Dave Warner's playing.
Yeah, of course. Dave
Warner's fallen off the vine. Which is interesting in itself. You'd reckon. I thought Dave might have got picked up late by one of the IPL teams as a replacement player, but maybe he was aware of the consequences. Have you seen what's happened to that Corbin Bush, the South African player who plays for Mumbai Indians?
Yes,
overlooked in the IPL auction, goes into the PSL auction, which happens after it, which makes sense. Gets picked up. But now Mumbai have picked him up as a replacement player in the IPL, so he's tried to pull out of the PSL, so the PSL is suing him. Yeah. And fair enough too, I reckon.
Yeah. It's a huge payday, isn't it, for anyone playing in the IPL? You think of Bryden Carse and Lazard Williams and Lockie Ferguson and Gerald Katsaya. To miss out. I know people have been critical of Pat Cummins and Mitchell Starc for skipping the Champions Trophy, but when you think about what pace bowlers put themselves through and the opportunity to cash in the IPL, that's pretty significant. I mean, imagine if you're Umran Malik at the moment, who was, a year ago, people were talking about him as the quickest bowler in India. He hasn't got picked up. That's a huge hole in his career. it's very tough, I think, for a pace bowler in particular these days, deciding how and where to allocate their energies.
Yeah,
I see
well,
Mitchell.
they're worth a lot of money, aren't they? Like Hoff and Stark are both getting more than $2 million.
Yeah.
Hoff, what is it, Bangalore, and Stark for Delhi. Yeah.
What's Steve Smith up to? He's gone very quiet. Couldn't he play in the PSL? He's not playing the IPL. What about Ben
he's not,
Stokes?
is he?
Ben Stokes isn't busy at the moment.
The next
What
time
about
he's
Ben Duckett?
Smith will be playing in the American League, I'd suggest.
Yes, yeah.
Well, Brook pulled out of the IPL, and he has been disciplined for it.
He has, isn't it? And this is the first action that that the franchises have taken after last September. They decided to make it mandatory for players to register at mega auctions and specified a maximum fee at the mini auctions, and trailed these bans for late decisions to withdraw. Now, Brook has said at the last minute he did get picked up, but he said at the last minute he would like to concentrate his energies on international cricket. And part of me thinks, yeah, I understand where the franchises are coming from. It is irritating to have to pick a player who you've picked up for a sizable sum and then to have to replace him when the talent pool is depleted. But if the International Cricket Council was a serious body, wouldn't it defend the rights of a cricketer to concentrate their energies on representing their countries? I mean, that's actually a decision in the interests of international cricket that Harry Brook has taken. And yet he ends up being penalised for it. But of course, we know who's in charge of the ICC now, and we know that they're not exactly going to lean against Indian cultural influence.
But he would presumably sign a contract.
Yeah,
with his franchise, and a contract's a contract. I mean, it's the same thing with Bush, isn't it? You sign a contract with Pakistan and you say, oh, I don't want to do that because I can get more money from India. Well, I'm sorry, it's too late to change your mind. And there were a few players sort of rorting that system a little bit.
Yeah, they were.
For the IPL. Yep. But it does worry, like this, as you say, this rule only came in last year. And is this the first time that we've seen it applied to anybody? He's got a 2-year ban. He can't play for 2 years. That's a significant financial impost. He would have considered that. And I think he's clearly been tapped on the shoulder to be the next ODI captain, hasn't he? I think. So, he knows what his life looks like after this. But it's a message to everybody else, isn't it? Stay in your lane. Like, Pakistan have sent a message to Corbyn Bush, no, mate, you're not doing that. And the IPL have sent that message to Harry Brook as well. Yeah. Oh, well, not just to Harry Brook, but to anybody considering that. You got to keep your eyes down. We're paying you guys serious money. We expect you to show up when you sign on the line.
Well, I think it was aimed chiefly at those players who, disappointed by the amount of money that they've fetched in the auction, suddenly develop a last minute excuse for not playing.
Yeah.
I actually think that I'm more sympathetic to Brook because I think that his circumstances have changed since the auction.
I reckon he probably went into this with his eyes wide open. Yeah, I think he's done the right thing. Don't get me wrong. I don't think there's any injustice in what's happened to Brook. It's just it's a bit of a message to everybody else, isn't it? Yeah. Don't play footsies with us unless you're willing to go all the way. The disparity in payments is interesting now. I mean, I've only just got the Australian payments in front of me, but as I said previously, the bowlers are getting a couple $1 million. But a Glenn Maxwell or a Mitch Marsh, well, 700, 600,000 Australian dollars. It's considerably less, isn't it? Well, I think Marsh is going to play as a batter only, isn't he?
I think that's right. Yeah, there's half of Mitch Marsh is going to this tournament, and none
so
of Cameron Green.
He might only get 300,000.
Yeah. So I mean, look, players are. I think there's a few players who are there for FOMO, fear of missing out. If you leave yourself out of account for a year, then you sort of drift to the bottom of the pile. I think there's probably a few players there who would rather not be going, but they're going because they kind of feel as though they have to, and because of the potential of being squeezed out.
You reckon?
I don't think that's necessarily a prescription for great cricket. Players who are there kind of, who could do with a break and now won't get it.
Yeah. Well, the Australians that are going over are all pretty well rested. Hoff and Pat Cummins are going to be they're going to be pretty fit when they get there. They haven't played cricket for ages, have they?
Cherry ripe, cherry ripe.
That Cummins situation and that situation with Usman Khawaja, that's driving the previous generations mad. They're grinding their teeth over that. They're furious. They find it really hard to believe that someone wouldn't play when a Sheffield Shield final is possibly on the line for their team, and can't believe that Cummins gets away with sort of shrugging off all those one-day tournaments. But it is. I think you wrote that article recently, didn't you? Because I came up with this great idea the other night. I'm going to write an article about player power. Then I went, oh no, I think Gideon wrote it 2 months ago, didn't he? Is that right?
I can't remember, mate. I've been around for too long. They're all blurring into one, my pieces.
But maybe there's a little bit of a correction going on between the enormous power that players have in their domestic markets compared with the power that they have in the international market with the franchises.
Yes.
To which there's something interesting on the horizon.
Nice segue, Pete. Gideon. Nice segue. Yes, you drew my attention to that piece at the weekend. The latest instalment in the Saudi Arabians about to bust up cricket saga, which has been going on for at least 2 years.
Is it a Monty Python sketch, or is it in A Fish Called Wanda? You know, that the person's on the horizon approaching and they never get there.
They'll get here eventually.
Not to talk the story down. The story's by Chris Barrett. It's an interesting
But they're weighed
story.
down by their money bags, Pete. They're weighed down.
Is that why
it takes a while?
The man on the black horse is so slow to get here. Tell us what is this concept? Could you piece it together from?
Well, it's according to Chris's piece, it's an 8-team competition to be played in 4 different locations at different kinds of the year. The brainchild is or the impresario is Neil Maxwell, the ubiquitous Neil Maxwell, who manages Pat Cummins, among other things. It used to be a board member of the ACA and Cricket New South Wales. One of the interesting things about Chris's piece was that he said that the idea had been developed in partnership with the ACA, the Australian Players Trade Union, which is interesting because about 6 months ago I actually asked the ACA whether they had any involvement in Max's efforts, and it was fervently denied. Maybe things have happened subsequently, I don't know. But an interesting role for a players' trade union, and it was interesting, I think, the way in which the piece was couched, because it anticipates criticisms of the idea. It says, the Global League has been drawn up aspirationally as a way to establish an alternative revenue source beyond cricket's funding model. Smaller nations would share in the funds raised, and it's hoped they would be encouraged to embrace the idea and play less unprofitable cricket. So it's all philanthropic, apparently. It's just all done because it's just a good idea, not because the rich are looking for ways to get richer. Sources also say, Pete, our old friends sources, they say the travelling league will complement, not take away from, domestic T20 tournaments. And it's going to bail Test cricket out, isn't it? We're going to bail Test cricket out by playing more T20. Okay, right. Interesting. Paradoxical.
That's a very cynical take from Gideon, on this suggestion. And you haven't even... What is this suggestion that they have? They're going to play 4 tournaments... No, are they going to play at 4 locations a year?
4 locations a year.
8 teams.
Yes.
And it's not going to encroach on the existing major domestic franchise cricket, nor is it going to encroach on existing Test match cricket. So this is another league funded by the Saudis. So there's lots and lots of money. That horse is going to take a fucking long time to get here. It could be gold. It could be gold.
And it's going to gallop straight through vacant windows in the calendar, Pete. Vacant windows. You know all those vacant windows?
Well, there aren't
out there?
any. That's
there
the
aren't
thing.
any.
No.
Yeah.
But you know what I reckon. And these stories, they're interesting because you're flying a kite, really, aren't you? And they're only really good when the league is announced the next day or the next week.
Yeah.
Because 2 years ago, in Fairfax Papers, Bredig had a story about about the Saudi. Was it about the Saudis putting money in, or was it about the franchises putting the players on 12-month-a-year contracts?
Yeah.
And Neil was part of that story as well. There's no doubt that this change will come at some stage, and this sounds like the model that it might be, because Jay Shah's involved. You say that the story claims that the ACA was involved. Well, if the ACA was involved, that means that the current CEO of Cricket Australia was involved too, doesn't it? Because he's jumped horses since. I reckon I'm not sure if it says it in the piece, but is it saying essentially this is more about Test match cricket being put into Windows? Yeah, Windows for Test match cricket in certain geographies. Yeah, they'll have a Northern Hemisphere window for Test match cricket, and they'll have a Southern Hemisphere window for Test match cricket, and in the middle there they can open the windows whenever they want because the weather's better. But that seems to me to be the bit that I take out of this. Like, how does all of this work? It only works if you ring fence Test match cricket. And then what sort of Test match cricket are you playing in those windows? You're not wasting your time with silly little series like Australia versus Sri Lanka in Galle. Yeah. You're just playing blockbuster Test match cricket in Windows. This is that moment that Adam Gilchrist actually came back from the first IPL and said, we'll end up here. He said, we won't be talking about Windows for T20 cricket. We'll be talking about Windows for international cricket in years to come. He saw that from the very first, 19 years ago, was it? 18 years ago at the first IPL.
I mean, in some ways, we've got a 9.5-month window for international cricket now because nothing else can take place in the IPL window. That window's been bricked up.
That has been bricked up, hasn't it? Yeah. And, and the ECB have bricked up to a degree, haven't they? Well, maybe not so much.
The other interesting takeaway from Chris's story was that it specified this group SURJ.
This is Danny Townsend.
This is Danny Townsend, who
Australian Professional League Soccer guy.
Indeed, it's a subsidiary of the Public Investment Fund, which is the vast, opaque, and tentacular sovereign wealth fund of Saudi Arabia. It has a specific mandate, though. It says, I was reading an interview with Danny Townsend from late last year, saying our mandate is very much around international investments that deliver for the Saudi sports economy. Now, I'm not quite sure how this vehicle can serve both the Saudi sports company, bail out Test cricket, help all cricket's junior nations simultaneously, unless it's a very, very remarkable financial model. We shall see.
Have they? They've got some money in this mob that are trying to buy Fox as well, aren't they? Fox
I do,
Sports.
yeah, DAZN, yeah, yep.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with Fox Sports. Should that takeover happen, and should they become less interested in cricket? Mm-hmm. That'll have a significant impact on the Australian market. Fortunately, at the moment, Seven are very excited about cricket, and they bought that Saudi series.
Yes,
I reckon that they might
Sri Lanka series.
They might. Did I say? What did I say?
You said the Saudi series. You're getting ahead of yourself, Pete. That could have been an exclusive.
Well, they might buy the West Indies.
They might. Yeah,
that'd be interesting if they did. Be good if both of them bid for it.
Mm. And this is before we even get into the human rights and climate change implications of doing business with Saudi Arabia.
They were covered off in the article, human rights, weren't they?
Mm. They were glancingly referred to.
Khashoggi, was it Khashoggi who was dismembered by the Saudis?
Yeah.
By the bloke who head of this sovereign nation fund.
But I mean, Pete, you wouldn't last 2 seconds in Saudi Arabia. What with your tweeting habits? Because tweeting gets you into a shitload of trouble in Saudi Arabia, mate. Oh no, you wouldn't just get a nasty letter from SEN. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Well, I was looking up this Noura Al-Qahtani, the professor of literature at King Saud University, who is serving a 45-year sentence for using the internet to damage the social fabric. Or indeed, Mohammed al-Ghamdi, a cartoonist,
laughing?
sentenced to
That's
prison
terrible.
for 23 years for insulting Saudi Arabia. The Manahal al-Otaibi, a 29-year-old fitness instructor, given 11 years in prison for calling to an end to the system of male guardianship and filming herself shopping in dungarees. How dare she?
But there's an upside. Sport's going to make Saudi Arabia a more open society, Gideon.
Is
I think
it
I read
really?
that
Okay.
somewhere.
All
Yeah,
right,
it
okay.
will.
Yeah.
What's his name? The bloke who's in the chart, the MSB or something, who runs Saudi Arabia now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That guy.
MLB. That guy. Yeah.
MLB.
Sounds like
Yeah.
it sounds like
guy.
the
That
T20
guy.
league he runs. Yeah, that guy. Yeah. No, he says that it's going to make them much more open.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Hasn't he? I would have thought he'd be busy working on NEOM. You know, the mega city.
No, I
The
don't know.
mega
about
city
the
that's
mega
going to
city.
cost more than the entire GDP of Saudi Arabia to build, and where 21,000 migrant workers have died since construction began.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't know anything about that. Bigger than a stick shed, is it?
Lots of fun. Look, there's lots of layers to this story, and it's going to be very interesting to see the way in which it unfolds and the way in which it is sold to the unsuspecting, guileless cricketing world, and who is prepared to speak up against it. But you
Well,
can be guaranteed that the independent cricket podcast of Cricket et al., we will call it as we see it.
Well, as long as the Saudis aren't mean to us.
Anyway, do you want to take a break, Pete? Let's take a break and come back in a moment with a little bit more Cricket et al. Pete, Saley.
Yeah.
What's Saley?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Gideon. Saley. I'm the man to come to when you've got questions about Saley. Saley's a new eSIM service app that's brought to you by Nord Security. There's several different eSIM plans available in 150 countries. Now, what it is, you remember when we were doing when I was trying to do the podcast on the roof in Gaul?
I remember it well.
And because I only had my stupid Australian SIM, and I couldn't pick up any Wi-Fi. I didn't have Wi-Fi to do the podcast, so I ended up in all sorts of awkward spots. If I had Saley, when I'm abroad, I've got all that stuff. It's instantly transferable.
Exactly. Isn't it amazing? With Saley, all you have to do is download it once. An eSIM can be installed only once, eliminating the need for users to install a new eSIM for each country. It saves you time, Pete. You don't need to wait in line at the airport to get a local SIM card. You avoid scams.
Yeah, scams at those railway stations and stuff. I've seen that happen. They've never got me, but you've got to be careful buying those eSIMs in those little spots in airports.
You minimise those roaming fees that you've just been complaining about. You stay connected. You don't have to wander around looking for a public Wi-Fi spot like Diogenes looking for an honest man.
We would not have got lost in Delhi if we'd had Saley. You remember that day?
I do. Trying to find it on Google Maps.
Yes,
Yeah.
and if we had got lost, we could have called them because there's 24/7 support, and I'm sure
that's a
they'd love to help
beautiful
us out.
segue, Pete. Oh, I couldn't have scripted that better.
Yeah.
Anyone can get a Saley eSIM plan on the Saley website or through its apps. You can buy a plan. There are multiple plans in over 150 countries. You can install the eSIM. If you purchase the eSIM on the Saley website, you'll need to download the Saley app first. Activate the plan. If you activate your eSIM before you leave, you'll be able to easily connect to the local network when you land without the need for an internet connection.
It's like almonds, isn't it? You've got to activate them to get the best out of them.
So all that remains for me to say, Pete, is to just go to saley.com/cricket et al. And use the code cricket et al. To get an exclusive 15% off your first purchase. Can't say fairer than that, Pete. There's a QR code on the screen that you can scan, and there's a link in the show description. So there's no reason not to do this. It'll change your life. And we're back on Cricket et al. Pete, it's always good to catch up with you, comrade. You said we might discuss what we're watching and listening to and reading at the moment. Pete, what have you been up to?
I'm a bit slow. I've been on a Quentin Tarantino movie marathon last week. I just decided, yeah. Well, I'm in despair. I told you, I am sort of emotionally disturbed at this time of year with the football starting and the cricket winding down or winding up, as you say. So Sue and I watched what's that? Is it Jackie Brown? Is that the name?
Oh
of that
yeah,
one?
yeah, yeah. That's a
That's
good
quite
movie.
nice. That's
Yeah,
good. Yeah,
yeah.
that's the sort of Quentin Tarantino that Sue can watch.
Yep.
And because she's not really good with all that killing stuff. But then I stayed up and did a marathon. I did Planet Terror, which is fantastic. That's a
Okay.
Tarantino. Well, Tarantino's involved in that with Rose McGowan. That's a kind
Oh
of
yeah.
zombie sort of. Yeah, it's a zombie movie
Okay.
essentially.
Yep.
Delightfully incoherent. Haven't got a
Mm-hmm.
fucking
Right.
clue what's going on. But there's this fantastic, like all good zombie movies, it's got some good black humor in it. And you've got to see the scene where the girl, what's her name? Cherry's leg gets bitten off by a zombie in a car crash.
Mm-hmm.
And so she gets taken to the hospital. And it's very gory scenes where they attach a sort of, little sort of device to the end of her leg. But she doesn't get time to recover because all the zombies come to the hospital. So old mate, the love interest, breaks a leg off a wooden table and shoves it onto her stump. So she's got a wooden leg for the fight against the zombies, which is fantastic because she manages to smash it onto a zombie's head and then kill him with the wooden leg.
Can you kill a zombie?
Yeah, you can.
I mean,
You just
okay, all
drive
right.
it
Yeah,
if
just
you
checking.
wooden legs through the heart. But then, of course, they fuck, and it's
Of
fantastic.
course they do.
And it's a fantastic sex scene. It's really romantic,
Right.
and you're forgetting all about all the gore, and it's got and they're going for it, and then just quietly she raises her left leg, and you see broken table leg come up from under the sheets, and I don't think I have laughed so hard in a movie for about 20 fucking years, but it got better. Because her wooden leg, after the sex scene, they'd have figured, the broken wooden leg's not going to work. There's another fight scene. He attaches a machine gun to her leg.
Oh,
So she's mowing down zombies
right.
with
Okay.
a sawn-off
Wow.
machine gun. I couldn't get enough after that, so I stayed up and watched Death Proof. Have you seen that one?
No, I've heard of it. Go on.
It's
Tell me
very
more.
good, very
Yeah,
good.
okay.
I think that's more of a slasher movie. It's got some
Okay.
great car chase scenes. Group of girls go out for dinner. They meet this guy who's he's a stunt driver. He's evil. Kurt Russell, I think. He's got a cut on his face. He's evil. He kills them all in a car crash. Then another group of girls go out for dinner a few years later and they run into old mate again. But one of them's a Kiwi stunt driver herself. She straps herself to the hood of their car, and it's one of the best car chases you've ever seen.
Right.
And it's very girl power at the end. So that was
Okay. All right.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Planet Terror and Death Proof
Okay.
and Jackie Brown. I did them all in one night.
Okay.
Didn't wake up till 1 o'clock the next day.
I've been reading a book which you would enjoy, Pete.
You're reading a book.
I'm reading a book. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's this one here.
Oh, good. No one can
set.
see that, Gideon. I can only
Okay,
see a
right.
picture of a
Okay.
man with
Yeah.
a number of
Hang on.
faces.
I need
What
to
is
look
it?
at my own screen, don't I? There we are.
Broken Archangel.
Archangel. It's about Roger Casement.
I know he said
the-
Archangel, but anyway.
The Irish Patriot would appeal to you, Pete. Roger Casement, conscience of the world. The fearless rapporteur of human rights abuses in the Belgian Congo, and by the Peruvian Amazon company in the Edwardian era. Perfervid
really?
patriot of Ireland and imperial
really?
traitor. Do you know his story about how he?
No, I don't.
He went to Germany to kind of try to raise a ragtag Irish army to fight on the side of the Germans during the First World War.
Oh, yes, I remember this
Yeah.
incident. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, stormed ashore in Ireland with absolutely nobody else. Got arrested and was not only convicted as a traitor, but his deeply closeted homosexuality was made a significant issue in the prosecution. And it's kind of fascinating because the biographers made extensive use of Casement's own diaries, which intersperse observations of humanitarian atrocities with reportages of the various penises of his sexual assignations.
Oh, really?
Tragically, he was betrayed by his longest lover, a deeply, deeply duplicitous man and ended up hanging. But it's a fascinating story of a deeply, deeply divided personality.
In a deeply divided time.
In a deeply
what are we talking
divided
about?
time.
1916, 1917.
Yeah.
Was he on a German sub with rifles or something like that?
He was,
like that,
yes,
wasn't it?
yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, well, there was another ship coming that was loaded with ammunition that was sunk by the British. So the whole thing was a complete fiasco. It's around about the time of the Easter Rising.
The British are so toxic to old mate that he decides to side with the Germans at this point in history.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't go all that well, but neither did siding with the fucking British. But anyway, it's a lose-lose situation for the Irish.
And I wish I could be as highbrow as you watching Quentin Tarantino, but we're a MAFS only household these days. Is anyone else out there watching MAFS? It's utterly compelling. The worst of mankind, yet I cannot look away.
What happens? Like people meet and get married. What happens? How does it work?
Yeah, right. Okay, so
look, I taught you through the zombie movies. You can talk me through this.
Okay, the contestants are introduced to each other at the altar, and they have to. They go through a sham marriage, and they have to live together. They're matched up by a group of soi-disant experts who then belie their guise as experts by shackling completely incompatible couples, setting utterly divisive tasks, and issuing a non-stop supply of nonsensical advice.
But that sounds like a standard arranged marriage.
It does a bit.
You get put together by a family that doesn't really know what you want. And
this is
the rest of their life.
This is even worse because they do purport to be experts. Oh man, I can't go into it. But some of the personalities are just Jamie the bogan banshee, and with her paramour dim bulb Dave, and unintelligible Adrian, who requires subtitles every time he speaks, demented Jackie and her humiliated consort Ryan, poor old Christian Karina and her gaslighting boyfriend Paul. It says a lot when the most sympathetic character is like this emotional eunuch called Elliot, who you feel sorry for because he's constantly being pilloried by this weird sort of volatile 20-something. Baby oil Billy, mummy's boy Tony, Lauren, who has this weirdly immobile face and this cat's bum mouth. Oh, I'm going to be so sorry when it's over because I just won't know what to do with myself.
Do they does it involve sex and stuff? Like you
absolutely.
You have a first night and everything.
They do. They've got
Bob Santamaria was fucking right about modern life.
It's probably too late for you now.
Hey,
Pete,
you want to get married and do
it next year, so we got something to talk about.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. Really, you'll get addicted.
How often is it on?
It's on a lot. It's on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I think. And then the periods between, you're absolutely jonesing for it. We got into the habit last year when Janine was recovering from surgery, and we actually needed something that sort of just slipped us into a politely vegetative state. But it's genuinely addictive television.
I remember that time you and I watched Home and Away in a pub in Birmingham.
I remember that too. Yeah.
And so I understand that state that you slip into.
Yes.
Where you're just looking, at this imaginary world. Did you go to the Grand Prix yesterday? Speaking of the imaginary world.
No, it poured with rain here. Absolutely, poured with rain.
It was. I checked. It was 36 degrees here, and it was 16 degrees in Melbourne.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not that far.
It hardly stopped raining all day. In fact, our D Sunday semi-final was washed out. So the higher placed team's gone through, and D Sunday's season's over, which is always a terrible way for a season to end. But it does happen every so often. We're still in it. Our A's are still in it.
That's good. And Paul McGrath tells me that there's 3 grand finals for Camaret next week.
Good luck, Camaret. Good luck to everyone, actually, who's out there in a final. So the ranks have dwindled, but the stakes are high at this time of year, and it's always terrible if your team doesn't make finals, but it's great when it does.
I'll take your word for it. My
Okay.
team never made a finals.
That's all we've got time for on Cricket et al. This week. Been great to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back next Monday to talk through that first IPL doubleheader, Pete. So don't stay up and watch Quentin Tarantino films. Your task is closer to home. It's goodbye
I
from
won't
me.
do that then. And it's good night from him.